A cloud migration journey can be a challenging one for many organizations. When you've worked with quite a few, you start to see a certain pattern emerge. I think I would say the top five challenges that we've encountered is typically around selecting the right workload that you want to start migrating to the cloud. That might be, one area that you're challenged with. In terms of workloads, what we typically encounter is they either pick a workload that is critical to the organization, to the company. There are possibly certain commitments already made by the business to the outcomes, and the workload is being constantly enhanced. Now the development, test, and deployment teams have to figure out where to deploy these updates to. Is it going to be on-prem? How are you going to move this? And therefore, as you attempt to migrate, you're going to face challenges in sort of a moving target, if you can see that. Another area that relates to workloads is they pick a workload with many dependencies. So maybe there are multiple systems that the workload has to connect to complete a transaction. And if you're going to pick that up and migrate to the cloud, you have to understand that all of these other systems that it has to connect to complete a transaction are still on-prem. And therefore, there's a lot of back and forth. There can be performance-related challenges and so on. So when you talk about workload, that is typically the two areas that we've seen teams face challenges. So that's number one. Number two is unanticipated challenges, whether it be in terms of you're working through your roadmap, you've now encountered a challenge where you have to use, say, for example, a cloud native offering, a managed service, for example, but you've never worked with it. And you've worked with it Sloan or a lookalike on-prem, but the offering from a public cloud provider is very different. So it is important to understand that they can pose significant challenges. And if you're hitting quite a few of them, you're probably working with a team that is not quite there to meet the knowledge and the experience ask that is required. Typically, our guidance has been work with a good consulting partner. There may be some relationships that you already have in place that you can use. Maybe you can look at your cloud provider and see if there's a network of consulting partners that can help you. Typically, those are the areas where you're going to quickly find the necessary talent to be able to continue to commit to your timelines and deliver. Now, when you get into certain other areas, like, for example, competing timelines or priorities, that is something that you should anticipate, whether you encounter it within the first month or the first few months. It's going to happen. Business is not static. The markets are not static. So typically, the third reason where you can get into trouble is you start your journey with some commitments to headcount, to budgets, and so on. But over a period of time, there may be certain opportunities or challenges that need to be met immediately that aren't quite aligned with your migration plan. And those budgets and the headcount might need to be moved out. Typically, those sorts of priorities and dependency challenges should be anticipated. So being sure to understand that you have a good plan, a good roadmap that can adjust to these challenges by either trimming down what you can get done within a certain window of time and therefore adjusting your success metrics as well would be a good thing. The next area that we've typically seen some challenges with are around licensing. So there are certain enterprises that have site licenses for certain products and solutions. And when they go to the cloud, they may or may not apply. So be sure that you have those appropriate conversations ahead of time. So if you have a dependency on licensed software, or even support for that matter, make sure that you have the same level of support and that your licenses are valid in a cloud environment. And if they're not, have those appropriate discussions very early on so you're not challenged by it, because it involves procurement, it involves budgets and so on. Therefore, that can be time consuming and a challenge if you wait long. The other area, which is probably the fifth area that we've encountered challenges, or teams have encountered challenges around security and compliance. Typically, the issue is that the security and compliance postures are very well defined on-prem. Now they're going to be asked to operate in an environment that they may not be entirely familiar with. So include them right at the start of this entire process, right from the planning stages, so that they can find ways to understand this environment better. If they need certifications, they can work towards that. If they have gaps, that is another area where you can look at external help to address. And a lot of this takes time, so make sure that you're very realistic in your timelines, and make sure that you have the appropriate buy-in from all the teams. So if you do face any of these challenges, that they are very, very supportive, and you're able to find a plan that addresses that challenge.